So fight in February continues apace, and after that dominant display by Kell Brook, we were all a bit worried going into that fight if maybe they were both a bit past it at 35 and maybe, not obviously, well, really not in the primes of their careers, which happened a few years before. But this weekend, coming up on Saturday the 26th of February at the Hydro Arena in Glasgow, we've got an unquestionable clash of two guys really in their primes. We've got number one in the super lightweight division, what we used to call the light welterweight division, Josh Taylor, who holds all four belts, is the first British fighter, the first Scottish fighter to be a unified champion in the four-belt era, against his number one mandatory for the WBO belt in Jack Catterall. This is a fascinating fight. It's supposed to be kind of Josh Taylor's homecoming. It's supposed to be him kind of, having a bit of a gimme fight in a way, coming back to Glasgow, bringing back all the belts, proving himself unquestionably number one in the world in that division. But he is fighting his number one mandatory contender in Jack Catterall, and I think this is going to be a lively scrap. I think it's a little bit more dangerous than maybe people are thinking on. It's not as nailed on as people think it is, and I'll go through why. So first of all, we've got Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, 31 years old, only had 18 fights. Hard to believe in those 18 fights what he's achieved. 13 KOs in those 18 fights. Incidentally, he's fighting Jack Catterall, an undefeated challenger. It's worth mentioning that Josh Taylor has fought 7 times in his 18 fights against undefeated people. In his last fight, Jose Ramirez was also undefeated when he unified all the belts, and 6 times before that he's faced undefeated fighters. So, he was a very accomplished amateur, represented his country, and in the 2010 Commonwealth Games won a silver medal, in the 2014 Games won a gold medal, and then turned over in 2015 with Shane McGuigan and Cyclone Promotions. That ended a bit sourly, fairly recently in his career, and he's gone over to Ben Davidson for that fight with Ramirez, and is absolutely riding high, top of the game, top of the tree, has never been knocked down. Just looks the whole package as a fighter, incredible dominant will to win, very, very skillful, very tough. So that's Josh Taylor coming into this fight. Understandably the favourite. Now, who's his challenger? Well, it's the WBO mandatory number one contender in Jack Catterall, who's 28 years old, 26-0 with 13 knockouts in those 26 fights. Now, I say he's number one contender for the WBO. That doesn't really mean he's number one. Josh Taylor is ranked number one by all by the four main governing bodies. Obviously, he's their champion, and by independent independent ranking bodies such as those used by Boxing News, he's ranked number one. Jack Catterall is ranked number 9. So, while he's a very worthy challenger, he's not really the person like Gervonta Davis or these other people hanging around in that super lightweight division who maybe, we would see as giving it more of a challenge to Josh Taylor. But I think Catterall's a very, very live opponent. Like I say, he's 26-0. 13 KOs. This will incidentally, we keep going up there, this fact, but this will be the 5th time in his 26 fights that he faces an undefeated fighter. Now, he turned over in 2012, so he turned over 3 years before Josh Taylor, but he turned over when he was only 18. His amateur career wasn't so stellar, really for that reason. He was a very good amateur. He had 66 amateur fights, won 48 of them, but, at 18, he decided he wanted to go into pro game, so turned pro. He's trained by Jamie Moore. He's a very tough, very confident young lad. He's never been knocked over. He's, he looks like he's the full package. They share a common opponent, incidentally, in Ahara Davis. Ahara Davis, Josh Taylor fought him in 2017 and stopped him in the 7th round. Interestingly, at that time, we thought this was a real 50-50 fight with Ahara Davis. They were both undefeated prospects at the time. And obviously Josh Taylor really, until that were, showed his dominance in that fight. The next year, Ahara Davis fought Jack Catterall and lost a 12-round points decision. So that's their only real common opponent where we can maybe take a bit of a metric from. But, Catterall was very much sort of still, it was a bit younger, was still learning at that time. Now, Catterall last fought in November 2020. The reason for that hiatus, obviously we've had the pandemic and everything else, was that he was, as I say, the mandatory, and has been for some time, the mandatory WBO number 1. So he was supposed to get a shot for the WBO belt. But he took step-aside money to allow Josh Taylor to fight Jose Ramirez in May 2021 to unify all the belts. So he just took the step-aside money instead of pressing his number 1 status, but with the condition that he'd take the money and then he would fight the winner of Taylor Ramirez, which seems a pretty smart move because, you're going to get to fight for the undisputed title, whatever you do, and here it is, he's fighting Taylor. So, I think this is going to be a harder fight than people say it is going to be. If you look at the bookies' odds, Taylor is 1-14. On to win this. So in other words, you'd have to bet £14 to win £1. The bookies are so convinced. Catterall is 13-2 to win, and the draw is 22-1. I think those odds are a little bit unfair to Catterall. I think, he's a very live, he's a confident young guy. The thing is with undefeated fighters, you don't know how far they can go. You don't know, really they haven't really sort of, they haven't found a level yet in a way. Also, as Taylor hasn't. I feel in this fight, though, the golfing experience is going to be a little bit too much for Catterall. He may be able to bridge it. We don't know that. But I just think Taylor's got, he's just a little bit better in all those areas. And the real thing that stands out is the quality of opposition that he's faced and the quality of opposition that he's overcome. So Catterall has never really faced anyone of the level of Josh Taylor. And obviously, why should he? Because he's just come to the top of the tree. So obviously, that's the final time when you find out, you take your leap of faith. Even though he thinks he can do it, I think Taylor's going to have a bit too much. I also think it is going to be a factor, it being in Glasgow, it being the homecoming, it sold out really quickly. It's going to be a vociferous Scottish crowd there, that Catterall's going up to. So I think, overall, I see Taylor, but I do think Catterall's going to have his moments. And I think, early doors, especially around maybe middle rounds of the fight, I think Catterall is going to have his moments. I think it's going to be closer than people think. But I do see Taylor being dominant in this one. And I see late stoppage or points win for Taylor after a slightly harder fight than the bookies thought it would be. And Catterall giving a good account of himself. But I do see this is Josh Taylor's homecoming, and that's kind of the way I see it playing out. But it's a great fight, and sometimes you have to pinch yourself. This is the unified champion coming home with all 4 belts, fighting his #1 contender, who also happens to be British. So it's just a great time for British boxing. Really excited by it. It's going to be a wonderful fight. Can't wait to watch it. And good luck to both lads. It's going to be fantastic.